Oh, oh, is
Wow.
it working?
Um,
Hello.
we have audio.
Oh, hello. Can we hear us? Yeah, it looks a little. Let me raise it up the volume just a little bit. Hello.
Hello.
All right. So if we drop below, I'm still going to raise it up a little bit more. Oh, if it's quiet, just let me know. Um, Welcome to a very special episode of The Comic Shop Does a Podcast. I'm seventh degree white belt, Evan Coy, and I'm here with our martial arts expert.
I'm a fourth degree master in Taekwondo, Michael Callie.
Oh, I'm going to take it to a different screen actually where we've got our names.
Ooh, we do? Awesome.
There we go. Oh, why is that not working? Oh boy.
Technical difficulties? That's never a big deal. You said we're live, right?
Yep.
Okay, we're live. So, for those of you who are watching the blank screen right now, there's a very special treat. At some point during this podcast, Evan is going to break his first ever board. That's your first ever board, right?
Oh, here we
Ever
go.
broken
All
a board
right.
in martial arts? In all of your martial arts training?
I've never broken a board in my life. Do you want to show me what we're looking at here? We're going to do
Yes.
this at the end, I think. I'm going to break a board live on
So,
Twitch.
this is a 1-inch-ish thick adult board, standard for breaking by any adult student. Evan's a little worried he's not going to be able to get through this.
This is a very thick board. I mean, this is no joke. I mean, it feels softer, I guess, but I'm very intimidated by the thought of breaking a board like this.
It's really not bad, I promise. On the subject of board breaking, a little bit of background information about myself. I am a...
Talk a little bit louder too.
And I need to get away from...
No, yeah, let's go this way.
Go this
No, let's go the other way.
So, I am a world-class power breaker. I haven't competed in a few years, but what that is you take boards like this, you put them in stacks with no space in between them. So if you want to break, what's we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you want to break 5 boards, they take 5 boards, they put them in a stack just like this. They put them about 2 inches off the ground. You get one chance to do a knife hand straight down through them and break as many as you can. When I competed in Colorado in 2016, I got through 6 boards. My personal record is 8. So if I can do 8 of these with no space in between them, I'm sure Evan can get through one with no injury at all.
I don't believe that, but we'll find out. So tell me a little bit about your martial arts background. How did you get into martial arts? What martial arts do you do?
So the only martial art I have ever done in my entire life is Taekwondo. Unlike most kids who normally start because
a little bit louder too.
Okay. Unlike most kids who normally start because they're picked on or just have low self-esteem, I'd always been interested in martial arts. It started when I was a kid. I really liked the Ninja Turtles. I always thought Power Rangers were cool. And from there, when my mom offered me the chance to join a martial arts school, I jumped at it. Didn't matter if it was karate, jiu-jitsu. If I could kick things, if I could hit things, and I could learn how to be a black belt, I was not going to pass that up. So I started training when I was about 9. I took a short break in high school to get my bearings on the normal teenage BS. I came back when I was 17 and got my black belt. Now a 4th degree. I've been training ever since. So about 15 years of consistent/inconsistent training has gotten me to where I am today.
How long does it take you to get a black belt?
It only takes you about 3.5 years, but just like anything else, it's all about what you put into it.
Yeah.
So you could earn it in less time if you try really hard, or it could take you longer. For me personally, it was a mental thing. I just didn't think I was mentally ready to be a black belt yet. So I took time to mature. For some people, the physical is all that matters, so they'll breeze through the exam like nothing. But I've always felt that martial arts, for as fun as it is to kick and punch things, has a dual purpose where we don't really want to attack people unless it's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of goes against the jiu-jitsu thing. But that's a sport element, and that's kind of different.
Yeah.
There's more sportsmanship involved there, more camaraderie. But I've spoken to many people my age, similar ranks, who have a lot more arrogance when it comes to martial arts. They're not in it because they want to be better people. Sometimes they're just there because they want to be the tough guy. So
I come from. I'll tell you a little bit about my martial arts background. I did karate as a kid. My friend was a year or two older than me, very athletic, and he was in karate for like maybe 6 months to a year before I got involved. and I made it to like a middle rank when I was like 15 or 16 or whatever. But I really wanted to like fight, I guess. Um, and we didn't do it. We would do things like the 3-step sparring and
Yep.
1-step sparring, where like Michael's away, and I'm throwing a kick, but I'm not kicking him, or I'm
Yep.
throwing a punch, but I'm not really punching you, and it's just more of a okay, like let's get our spacing and find our
Yes.
distance. And I didn't really care for that because we would then go to Jason's backyard and not beat each other up, but like we would
Wrestle.
we would wrestle and fight in his backyard, and like that was the fun stuff to me. So then I did um, a little bit of boxing in college, coming out of college, and I was not very good, but I enjoyed it, and that was the physicality of it. That like a lot of times the boxing gyms that was going to were it was just a lot of cardio.
Uh huh.
And then, they're teaching you technique like, jab, cross, hook, uppercut. But it was more just, here, let's jump rope for 25 minutes. And then you're going to hold hand weights and you're going to punch hand weights for 25 minutes. And then when you're totally exhausted, we're going to throw you in the ring for 2 sloppy rounds with somebody where everybody's just kind of like, But there was a physical element to it, and we would spar every once in a while. So that was kind of fun.
Yes.
And then from there was a assistant coach that they brought in at one of the gyms that I didn't really like the head coach. There was an assistant coach that they brought in. I liked him a lot. I think a lot of people from the gym liked the assistant coach, maybe more than the head coach. And one day he was like, "Oh, do you guys want to do some Muay Thai?" Which is Thai boxing, which uses Western boxing, but then there's also kick elements and like knees. It used to be the art of 9 limbs, which I know you're 9 limbs, because it was punches, elbows, knees, and kicks, and then
Gotcha.
the 9th limb was
Your head.
headbutts. But in modern Muay Thai, they've eliminated headbutts.
Probably for the better.
Probably for the better. There is technique to headbutts.
There is. So I have only ever taken Taekwondo, but I can go on a small Kung Fu side rant because I'm big into power breaking, and Kung Fu is best known, on top of being a very dynamic art, to have some really, really talented, skilled breakers. People who just bend pieces of metal, breaking through bones, punching through bricks like it's nothing. It's crazy. One of the ways that they learn to do that is called the iron palm technique, and you're just hitting something over and over and over again, building up those microfractures in your palms, your elbows, wherever it is. But there's an iron head sub-style of Kung Fu, and it's the same thing. You just rest your head on harder surfaces, and eventually you move on to
I've
headbutts.
never heard of that.
It's a very old, obscure style. Same with iron groin. That was another thing that was taught like hundreds of years
Iron
ago.
groin. I have a bronze groin.
Yes.
I'm working on my iron groin.
I'm not going to stand around and get kicked in the groin. So if anyone out there is still doing that style of Kung Fu, I have a lot of respect for you.
I don't. I think
it's
that's
not for
nuts.
me.
I think that's
No pun intended.
that's well, no pun intended. I think that to me just sounds dangerously
It does.
stupid. You can tell me that there's a safe technique for getting kicked in the balls. I don't believe that to be true based on personal experience.
Yeah, I've never had a positive experience with getting kicked in the groin. Obviously, Taekwondo varies a lot from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There's not grappling, but Taekwondo is an Olympic sport. So there's a sparring system where everybody wears a lot more protection than most sports, and there's controlled kicks to the body, to the head. But you always risk running into an injury, and I've run into more than my fair share of shots to the groin, whether it was wearing a cup or not wearing a cup. They never feel good. So yeah, you've got some.
What are your
with your-
thoughts on wearing a cup while training?
I wish that I wore mine a little bit more often.
I stopped wearing mine at a certain point in time. Actually, and sometimes even in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournaments, I don't know if cups are prohibited, but like you can leverage your cup in an armbar situation where it becomes a tool. And I do think that there's like legality to some of that. That like again, you're using this hard thing on somebody's elbow to gain leverage, and like
So
I don't know. But anyway,
the only time a cup is ever necessary in Taekwondo training is when we're sparring. So during our normal classes, we don't wear one. But that doesn't mean there's not a risk of injury if you just throw on a chest protector and work with a partner. Kids don't understand how tall people are. They don't always understand anatomy. And it always happens. You know, one kid just throws a kick a little too high, low, whatever, and before you know it,
yeah.
another groin shot. The worst groin shot I ever took was from someone about your size, Evan. They threw a front kick at me as I was walking towards them, and I took the full impact right to my groin. I continued the sparring match, much to my detriment, and I also didn't get it looked at. So don't follow my advice. Don't do that. Make sure if you get kicked in the groin, go get it looked at as soon as possible because it could affect you later on in life.
I can't. I mean, I know I've been kicked in the groin a lot of times. I always am very wary of one of the Muay Thai kicks that we throw if you like your left leg forward is like an inside thigh kick, and I would throw that sometimes, but I was always very wary of like you want to hit the inside thigh, you don't want to come up the middle.
Right.
This is groin kick talk on the Comic Shop podcast. This is great.
It is great. So Taekwondo sparring, there's no leg, there's shin pads, but there's no thigh pads. So kicks to the thigh don't count for anything. You can use them to weaken up your opponent. Like
really?
It's not against the rule. Like if you're targeting it, they might call it, but honestly, you've got the chance to bring your leg up to block anyways. So it's a calculated risk on your opponent's part.
So would you shield if I was to kick you in the thigh, you would shield with your shin?
I have about 3 seconds afterwards throw kick though. Otherwise, I get penalized. That's how they keep the sport interesting.
Oh.
So you have to block and counter. So if Evan was throwing a kick at me, I could do that and then immediately counter with something.
Okay.
So there's a bit more dynamics to it. The sparring that Taekwondo does is designed specifically to show off the dynamic kicks of the art. So there's really not a lot of emphasis on anything other than throwing the most beautiful roundhouse kick you can to the head or to the body to win your match. When I first started, it was a lot more like, I would say, the sweep the leg era of martial arts in the 80s. I've heard stories of people bringing super glue with them so they can just glue their nose shut at tournaments. You know, I've seen people fight.
Wait, what?
That. Yes.
What does that mean?
Somebody, I know, I can't remember their name off the top of my head, but they train out of a Watertown Taekwondo school. When he competed, it was not uncommon, because the head pads were a lot smaller than they were now, for people to get kicked in the face. And a couple of times that he broke his nose, he reset it and then glued one side of his nose shut just for support, I guess, and then kept fighting. Once again,
that's crazy.
I don't recommend that behavior to anybody. Martial arts is a lot safer than it used to be back in even the early aughts when I first started, or the middle aughts when I first started learning the arts.
100%. I think.
And it's all for the better.
Yeah.
It really is. For as much fun as it is to learn a million ways to break somebody's arm, there are a lot better things you can do as a martial arts student to show your skill. You don't have to be the person that kicks the most ass, for lack of a better term. You can be the person who's the most courteous, the most polite. You can be an example of yourself without ever throwing a punch.
I'm going to go to what I know in the martial arts world. The tough guys certainly exist.
Oh, yes.
And they're out there.
Yes.
But what I think is very interesting, especially in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community in the past maybe decade, is the amount of nerds that have moved into the space, because it's a physical game of chess.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of these guys and girls, there's a lot of actually women who are excellent. Women's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has exploded in the past 15 years. But they're able to play a game where everything is chained. And I don't know if that's what works with Taekwondo too, but like I get you in a position and I go, these are the four paths I can go down. And off of those paths are all these branches for different finishes and things like that. So I might be 3 or 4 positions away from putting you in a choke or a joint lock or something like that. And the way your body moves and you fight back will depend on which path I go down.
Gotcha.
But the high level players in this game like have all these chained paths in their head, and it's just fun to watch them execute. Whereas maybe some of the guys that are just like brute force, like I'm just going to wrestle you down, I'm going to fight to get you in the arm bar, even though I don't have the technique to take you there, I'm just going to use my physicality. And then there's a guy who's 70 pounds lighter who's like, well, I know all these defenses to this, and then I know the reversals to this. And then depending on what you do, because I know you're strong, I'm going to go down one of these paths, which there are any number of submissions, and if you keep stopping the submission, well, then I just switch to the next thing off of the chain. And it's like chess. It's, you know, if a chess player has an opening move, it's not just one move that they're thinking about. They're thinking, what are the next, 5 or 6 moves, and what can this person do to counter those things, and where am I going to take this game? So it's a very cerebral game of jiu-jitsu lately that is not dominated by, but kind of dominated by a lot of like nerdy, intelligent people who approach the fight game from like as a human chess angle.
Yes. So as far as Taekwondo sparring goes, you definitely can play those games. Uh, at the Olympic level, it's very, very common. Those matches are 3 minutes long. So it's 3 minutes of constant movement, trying to kick your opponent, trying to move out of the way. My personal favorite strategy has always been when someone moves towards you, pick up your leg and hit him with a front kick because it stops the entire momentum of the match. There are different things you can do from different positions, obviously, but it would be unfair of me to try and break down the entire logistics of nationals or Olympic style sparring for you guys because I've never competed at those levels, and they spar sun up, sun down. They are cut from a different cloth. These people live and breathe just the Taekwondo sparring.
Let's go back to your front kick. Like
Yes.
we've called that a teep, where I would go and would like hit you with the ball of my foot. And again, it's more of a push away
Yes.
than anything else. Is that the same technique?
Yeah, so front kick is the first kick that we teach everybody, and it is just bringing the foot straight up, kicking out with the ball of your foot. When we teach kids to spar, lots of kids like to charge at each other, so the first thing we'll tell kids to do is when you see someone run at you, pick up your leg, throw a front kick. It's also just a beautiful kick if you ever compete in forms, Taekwondo forms, because you can throw them really high, and they look really pretty. So it's a very dynamic kick, both for
If you're going for a high kick, that's again in Muay Thai we call it a teep. Is there points to that? Like I wouldn't think to. So Muay Thai, again, if I'm attacking with kicks, I'm typically attacking the lower body, and then I'm attacking up here with punches or like elbows. But there's not a lot. I mean, maybe there are guys like Cyrus Washington, who you would like him. He's a Muay Thai fighter, but he fights with like a Taekwondo style because he could box, but then also he just throws these big flashy axe kicks and things like that the other Muay Thai fighters typically don't throw. So he's got this weird combination of like flashy stuff that works, and then just like he also just has very good Western boxing technique. But I wouldn't think to throw a kick at somebody's head, a front kick at somebody's head like that.
So if you were to throw a kick at someone's head like that, you would have to angle it because you're not allowed to kick directly to the face, but it is still possible to kind of turn and kick to the head. The most commonly used kick in
do a power bomb and then macaroni flurry kick. I don't know a macaroni flurry kick.
Back to sparring. So the most commonly used kick is a roundhouse kick, which is just hitting with the top of the foot. Because kicks are only to the body or to the face, it's really your best option. Head contact is a lot more controlled than it used to be. People used to go for knockouts, but now they reward you more for throwing more impressive kicks with less power. So if you're doing a spinning back kick, which I think I can pull one of these off without hitting you.
Oh yeah, be careful.
Nope. So I won't hit you. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So a spinning back kick, something like that, would be worth 5 points in a sparring match. So as far as strategy goes, sometimes you want to kick high to make sure you can get that little advantage over your opponent. 1 point for a kick to the body, 2 points for a turning kick to the body, 3 points for a kick to the head, and either 4 or 5 points depending on the difficulty for a regular or for a turning headshot. So the strategy comes more from a point perspective instead of a grappling perspective.
But there are knockouts and things like that.
There are. It's just not quite as common as it used to be. Whatever happens, happens. That's really the rule. But 10 years ago, when I would go to my local tournaments and watch people compete, I would see 1 to 3 knockouts every tournament. It was just guaranteed someone was going to get knocked out. There were always EMTs on site. Now there are still EMTs on site, but if there's a knockout, it's a fluke, and it happened one time.
Have you ever been knocked out?
I have not personally ever been knocked out. The worst injury, not counting the groin shot I ever sustained in a sparring match, I went through a jump turning kick and fell and broke my foot. I didn't realize it till after the fight though, so it would be hard for me to tell how that actually affected my sparring ability. Headshots, I've taken plenty. The only one that ever really spun my head around was actually from a former customer of not a former customer, a current customer of the shop. I doubt they're watching, but if Paul Esden is watching, you're the only person who's ever spun my head around with a backspin kick. So that's a big deal.
I never was knocked out, but I was sparring against this guy, Alex Conover, who was a pro MMA fighter or about to turn pro because he had 5 or 6 amateur fights. And really, to turn pro, you don't need to do anything. You have to have a couple amateur fights or have like, if you were a D1 wrestler who was a Golden Gloves,
okay,
and where they go, okay, you don't need. But Alex Conover, great wrestler, and if good wrestlers. So if you're wrestling, like you put um, your power leg and arm behind you because distance is going to create power.
Right.
Whereas if you're wrestling, you're going the other way. You're putting your power arm and leg forward.
Right.
But they also know how to be very explosive. So a lot of those guys are if they turn into fighters, are southpaw. Even if they're an orthodox boxer, but they've spent their whole life wrestling with their power leg forward.
Gotcha.
And they're so good at it. Some of them can figure it out, some of them can't. The ones that can figure it out understand how to put all of their body into a punch, because that's how they like when if they're wrestling and they go in for a takedown or something. They just know how to put all of their body into something, and if they can figure out how to do that with punches. So anyway, Alex Conover was one of these guys that like I had way more boxing experience, but he hit so hard. And I remember one round of hard sparring because he was maybe he was getting ready for his first pro fight, which he won in a weirdly dominating fashion. I think he just was a backpack on this guy for the whole round, and the guy couldn't figure out how to shake him off. But I don't think Alex could quite figure out how to choke him out either. But like, he just kept every round would start, and he would just like arm drag him and take his back and just go like this, and and then he was just stuck on the guy's back for the whole time.
That's
but
crazy.
I remember sparring with Alex, and my coach at the end of the round goes, "You're done for the day," and I walked to the bathroom, and I kind of just remember staring at the bathroom, and I was like, what just happened? Like I wasn't out, but maybe the coach saw that like I was out on my feet for like half a second. It was like, that's it, you're done. But I remember coming back from the bathroom, it was just like kind of like shaky. I was like, all right, I think I'm good for the day. But yeah, good times at the old
Always
gymnasium.
good times. Yeah, I've never had a. I don't think I've ever had a bad time at the dojo. I've had difficult students, I've had difficult parents, but I've never had a really bad experience, which is nice to say. On the subject of wrestling, I have a student right now he's 14 or 15, and he really likes to practice wrestling on me because I've got about 40 pounds, or no, not 40 pounds. I've got about 60 pounds on him right now, 70, 80 maybe even. Mat returns hurt if you do not know how to fall properly for those. When they just pick you up and slam you, that's crazy stuff. It's a lot of fun working with him, but I have to make sure that I'm fully prepared.
Actually, that's one of those things I guess I don't know is we never really drilled a lot of slams and things like that because it's dangerous.
It's very dangerous.
And you need to have the right equipment and crash pads, and you're doing things at a very controlled speed, which is probably why the gyms that I trained at, like, you didn't really deal with, like, it's too high risk.
Yes.
And there's so many things going on in martial art, mixed martial arts, that, like, don't take place in wrestling, where, like, wrestling, I guess there's defenses for all of this stuff, but, like, there's so many more tools and defenses that you can learn, and it's very difficult for somebody to like shoot on you, pick you up, and slam you. Does it happen? Sure,
once in a while, yeah.
But like, is it worth training, especially at like a lower level? Probably not. Just get too many injuries.
No, it's very good at causing concussions. It's real easy for someone's neck to just turn the right way and for them to slam their head on the mat. And wrestling mats are pretty comfy, but when you're getting slammed into something, it doesn't matter how soft it is. There's not a lot of give.
We used to at my one gym, the head wrestling coach from Princeton used to come out. Chris Aries was the head wrestling coach at Rutgers. He would come out too. Am I conflating? The Princeton coach and the Rutgers coach would come out. And that was a lot of fun because they would bring some of the wrestler guys out that would want to like learn basics of boxing and things like that. But then if there was any sparring, which you wouldn't go hard. If it was just like like if somebody comes to your school and it's a seminar, you're not going to have like hard sparring afterwards. No. But that's how this was. But like sometimes you just be rolling with the guys. And man, those guys they'd tie you up into a pretzel. Which if you could get on your feet, yeah, you could get a couple shots in. But they would just move it. They would just shoot on you so quick, like it was all over. But that was fun. I'm very lucky. I've trained with a lot of really high level people. Not so much in the past 5 years or so since I tore my Achilles, but like I've trained with a lot of high level people. Like I trained with Brock Lesnar's coach for a period of time. His MMA coach. But like every time you would come out to the East Coast, you do the not week-long seminars. I guess they're week-long now, but like I would see him 5 or 6 times a year and train with him. And he had other fighters other than that, but that was his thing. He was a Minnesota guy. Or actually, he's a California guy by way of Minnesota. And just, fascinating. Like, they would come with all these crazy stories about all the back office stuff that would take place with all these high-level names and things like that. Eric Paulson, nuts. Super, super knowledgeable about all sorts of mixed martial arts stuff beyond just whatever. But I'm very lucky. Well, I trained with Koban the Cruncher, who is known as basically the highest level kickboxing match to ever take place was Ramon Dekkers and Koban the Cruncher. Ramon Dekkers from the Netherlands, Koban from Thailand.
Okay.
And this is about the same time frame as like Tyson blowing up. And there were comparisons back in like the late 80s, early 90s to these two Muay Thai fighters being like the Tyson Holyfield of Muay Thai, that they were global events and things like that. And I remember like Koban sitting by me and I was wrapping my hands, because you wrap your hands before you put on the gloves. I don't wrap my hands. I just don't. I know how to do it, but he sat there and was watching me wrap my hands, and he knew that I wasn't very good at it. He wrapped my hands, and I'm like that's just such a cool moment for me that like here's a guy who's now in his 50s or whatever who just teaches and didn't have the career that Mike Tyson had obviously, but fought at like the craziest highest level, like the Ramon Dekkers Koban fights are like again revered in the world over, and here he is wrapping my hands for me.
Yes.
Like, pretty cool.
So on that, I would say the highest level group that I've ever trained with is the group that's responsible for every single black belt certificate that I've ever received. So one of the things that separates Taekwondo apart from a lot of other arts is Taekwondo has a unified government. It's literally part of their school system. Mm-hmm. So if you want to be a certified black belt, if you want to compete at the Olympics, if you want to teach anywhere reputable, you have to go through the office called Kukiwan. And
Kukiwan.
Yes, Kukiwan. It literally translates to flag place. Okay. Something really simple like that. But either way, I've gotten a lot of opportunities to work with them. They trained me for my instructor certification. I had to fly to Colorado. I did a 16-hour seminar. That was 16 hours straight, not 16 hours like over a couple of days. Okay. They started us at 8 a.m. one day, and due to some flight constraints, didn't finish us until 5 a.m. the next day.
Oh.
It was brutal. Seminars right into training, right into lunch, right into more seminars, right into more training, right into dinner, and then we all had to take our test at the end of the night.
I find it very hard to eat lunch during a martial arts seminar.
When I was at the height of my competition career, when I was competing at states and nationals, I would usually do the 2 to 3 hour workouts on a 5-hour energy and a banana.
Yeah.
That was about all I could keep in my system.
Yep.
I ate a slice of breakfast pizza one time before a training, and it was the worst mistake I could have possibly made. When you're training at that level of intensity, it's really difficult to want to keep food in your system.
Coconut water and a granola bar, I think, was kind of my go-to, where it's like just to keep you from cramping up, but then you also need something in your stomach.
But to get back to Kukiwan for just a second, they have a 9th degree head instructor who started by teaching Odo Kwan, which is the art that predates Taekwondo, back in the 50s during the Korean War. He became one of the first grandmasters ever, and now he's the senior of promotions for Kukiwan now. So he trains in Colorado, he trains in Schenectady, he travels all over the world. He's about 80 years old, and he can still do a full split. He can bring his foot up to his head. He still competes at nationals to this day. His daughter is a 9-time world champion in Pumse, which is forms. To compete at a level that high and win 9 years in a row is completely and totally unheard of.
Yeah.
He trained his daughter to be unbeatable, and nobody has ever come close.
That's
since.
Cool.
I've trained with his name is Grandmaster Kong, and the entire Kong family comes from Miracles Taekwondo out of New Jersey. They are fantastic people. I couldn't recommend them enough. They spend a lot of time giving back to everybody else. They spend a lot of time traveling, networking, doing exactly what a grandmaster is supposed to do in a martial art, which is giving back to those that you started teaching in the first place.
Tell me about the history of Taekwondo, if you could.
So Taekwondo has a really, really strange and convoluted history. The very first art in Korea is usually called subak or taekyon, and it's more of a grappling art, or it would be a competition sport where people would grapple, or it would be see who could kick the other person the strongest. For about 2,000 years, there were some cave paintings and some very, very loose literature that suggested that was done. Most of what we know about that art was destroyed when Japan occupied Korea in the 1940s. At that same time, all Korean martial arts were outlawed. It was illegal to practice them. There were some people who went to Japan and got their black belts in karate, and there were some other people who stayed practicing the 9 or 8 kwans, which I can't name all of, but I can name a couple of them. in their basements at risk of being caught by the authorities and prosecuted. After the Japanese occupation of Korea was over and the Korean War had been more or less settled, the 9 Kwan school owners decided that they should unify their art into one so that everybody would be able to have a martial art like karate was trying to do at the time.
Yeah.
So Mudok Kwan, Odok Kwan, Tang Soo Do, there's a couple other strange little names like that that are very loosely tied to Taekwondo because they were the predecessor arts. And then they all became one in 1972 or 1955, depending on who you ask. There are some very serious points of contention there. But Taekwondo as we know it is most known to have started in the 70s. When Kukiwon was founded, it was built about 3 years later, and they immediately started working on becoming an Olympic sport so that they could set themselves apart from the other martial arts that were spreading over to America at the time.
Nightmare is in the chat for the first time.
Nightmare.
I don't know who that is.
Okay.
Do you want to break a board? It says kapow.
Kapow. Nightmare wants to break a board.
How do we do? Show me how to hold if I'm holding for a board break.
All right. So holding for a board is really easy. All you have to do is not move. What you're going to do is you're going to put your hands on the back here.
I'm terrified already.
Hands on the back here. Hold it straight out in front of you. I'm not going to do anything crazy. I'll just do a palm hit, okay? Are your arms bent? Bend them just a little bit.
Yep.
So I'll do a 1-inch punch. That'll be fun. Go right here and right through.
Holy shit. That's wild.
Yeah, it's not quite as difficult as it looks. Obviously, you have to build up.
I mean, that's a very thick board. I don't know. That's terrifying. Wow. I'm still nervous.
You'll be fine.
I'm still nervous.
You're not going to be doing any roundhouse kicks. You're not going to be doing anything ridiculous. No risk of injury, or minor risk of injury. The worst board-breaking injury, I've never had a really, really bad one, thankfully, but I've seen some really nasty ones. Usually people don't get injured on the board, they get injured trying to execute whatever crazy move it is that they're doing. So we have some people who like to try and jump off of chairs, you know, they're throwing off them underneath them, it'll fall.
Some of that stuff, like, every once in a while you see it on the middle of the night on ESPN, and it's kind of fun.
It is.
It's a little silly, but it's kind of fun.
But there are demonstration teams that take that to the nth level, and they take selfie sticks and they rig them up with boards and they launch people 8 feet up in the air. It is beautiful to watch. I've seen it in person probably 4 times now. Kukiwon has their own demo team, and those people spend 6 to 8 hours a day just practicing whatever it is that they're going to put out on the stage there. Just like with anything else, I mean, the more you put into it, the more you're going to get. So whenever you see a video of somebody breaking concrete, doing a crazy jump like that, it's not what you would ever do if you ever set foot in our Taekwondo school, at least not without a lot of training. So don't ever feel intimidated by a martial art just because you see something crazy.
I'm very intimidated.
No need.
That's wild.
That is a 1-inch board. Like I said earlier, I've done 7 of those in one stack with a downwards knife hand. I've done 8 in one stack with a kick. I've also broken 4 half-inch sandstone bricks in a stack, and I've done 4 slabs of concrete from a standing palm hit.
All right, so you're going to show me how to strike, and I think we're going to do a palm heel strike?
Yep.
So, show me your... and I really don't know palm heel strikes. Palm heel strikes actually, in mixed martial arts, there's an argument to get rid of the gloves in mixed martial arts and use bare hands, which would change things a lot because I don't want to throw a punch at you and break my hand.
Right.
But some of the early fighting that predates, not predates UFC, but kind of takes place around the same time frame, early 90s, is a organization called Pancrase. And Pancrase was, they would wear shin guards, which was interesting because, again, modern MMA, they don't wear shin guards. Right. No gloves. And it was primarily in Japan, there's a lot of crossover between mixed martial arts and pro wrestling.
Oh, yes.
So a lot of this stuff was, not a lot of it, some of it was scripted, and some of it was real fighting in a ring. It was a 3-rope ring, like a wrestling ring. It wasn't in a cage. But a lot of it was grappling and submissions, but there was striking. And there was a guy, Bas Rutten, who came over from the Netherlands. You know Bas Rutten?
I've heard of Bas Rutten.
He was a UFC champion as well, but he was a Muay Thai fighter primarily, and he learned the submission wrestling as he went. But his thing was, nobody was really striking in this organization, even though you could. I think you could do closed fist to the chest, maybe, and then it was palm strikes to the head.
Okay.
But nobody was doing that. And Bas Rutten came in and was just like, bam, and just like knocked somebody out. And everybody was like, wait, what is, you're supposed to be grappling. And he goes, bam, and knock you out with these palm strikes. So it was these brutal palm strikes. And then everybody had to adjust to that and like learn how to like box a little bit. Because, oh, and he also, beyond that, he had these devastating, the two biggest spots for Muay Thai are Thailand and the Netherlands, the Dutch for some reason.
Interesting.
I don't know why that is, because that's where that Ramon Dekkers came from too. And it was the Dutch style of kickboxing versus the Thailand style of kickboxing with Koban the Cruncher. And just like Taekwondo, there's nuances, and I can't really get into all of those things. But it was, you know, the flashier new style of the Netherlands versus the traditional old style of Thailand. But Bas Rutten came in with those palm strikes. Whenever I think about palm strikes, it's not a technique that I've trained. But I always think of Bas Rutten when he walked into Pancrase and just started just blasting people with these hooks that was hitting with the palm of his hand, because this is much more durable than it is your fingers.
The palm of your hand is very durable. As someone who's failed almost as much as they've succeeded power breaks.
Hey, thanks for subscribing, Nightmare. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So power breaking is a fickle art. You're not always at the mercy of physics. Sometimes you can be just as strong as you want, but the concrete won't break, the board won't break, there's a knot in it. There's a lot of outliers that go into it. I've never, thankfully, sustained a very serious injury from a palm strike, even on missing concrete. It's probably as far as bone density in my body goes, probably my right palm is the densest bone in my entire body.
So teach me how to throw a palm strike.
Okay, it's really easy. So everything in Taekwondo has a rotation. So I'm actually going to have you throw it from your side here.
Okay.
And you're just going to bring your hand straight out, twist it, and bring that palm right out. You're just leading with this part of your hand here. Okay? So that part right there, give a hand target here and hit it.
All right, so I'm not used to throwing punches from my waist either. My
You can
punches
throw your
my
palm
punches come
there if you'd like.
from up here, I guess, because I think of a boxing like I'm protecting my head. I would never drop my arms.
Which is a very big difference between Taekwondo and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Everything that you've been working on here, yeah, you'll be just fine. The secret is not stopping, okay? So you will have no problem getting through a board, I guarantee it. But everything in Taekwondo, all of our upper body motions have a twisting motion. So if I were to throw a punch at Evan, instead of coming from a hook here, I would just go straight forwards, okay? So all of the power and all of our strikes, our palm hits, even our neck hits, if we're coming across, there's always a rotation. Same thing with our blocks. So if I'm doing a palm hit, doing a palm hit. Punch, I'll show you punch from this side so you can see. My hand actually rotates, boom, straight over.
So you do teach punching, and to me this is actually very, the karate that I took was Shotokan karate. And when you're doing a block like this, where you're, which, that is a legitimate, you know, because again, if somebody's coming with an overhand strike, and you're creating that little roof where the arm's going to slide off, but to me that's a karate technique, and I know there's a lot of overlap between karate and Taekwondo. Same thing with like Shotokan karate, I remember being like horse stance, where you're like this, and you're throwing punches like this.
Yes. So when Taekwondo was first brought over to the States from Korea, most dojang owners advertised it as Korean karate. Obviously, Japan invaded Korea, so they kind of mixed cultures. But one of my favorite...
Oh, it's Codeman. That's Code. It was on Codeman today. All right.
Codeman, cool.
Yeah, this is a weird one. We don't normally do this stuff. Normally we do comics, but we had nobody else today, and so we're just going to talk martial arts.
Yeah, it's going to be very informative. So the man that is best known for creating Kyokushin strong style karate, his name escapes me at the moment. He was actually born in Japanese occupied Korea, and then came to Japan when he was probably like 13 or 14 and started honing a martial art there. So even with karate and taekwondo being as close as they are, there's still that as well. A lot of the original grandmasters had at least a first degree black belt in karate before they started making their own arts. So it would be unfair to say that taekwondo would be what it is today without the Japanese influence that came through. I think that's part of the reason why when taekwondo started to launch off, they really emphasized the kicks. You learn palm heel strike, you learn neck hit, you learn punch, you learn face punch, you learn another hand technique called a ridge hand. Yeah. That's really about it.
I feel like ridge hand, we did that in Shotokan karate. Yes. That's a neck attack?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'd hit someone in the neck. But there's front kick, roundhouse kick, side kick, axe kick, back spin kick, tornado kick. You know, the kicks just go on and on and on. That's really where taekwondo has its most merit. And if you really hone those kicks, they are something else. There's nothing like listening to the snap of someone's uniform when they throw a kick. I mean, it is brutal.
Should I do a board?
I think you should do a board, Evan.
All right.
I think you're going to be fine.
All right.
I picked the loosest, not the loosest, but like the least dense board. So if you're really worried about your power, you can step forwards when you do your palm hit to get your whole body.
Do you think I can just go from
I think
here?
you can.
Okay.
I
I'm terrified. I feel like this is really thick, and I know you did your 1-inch punch there, but like.
Well, remember that you measure once or measure twice, break once. Take as many measures as you need. Make sure everything's right where you want it. Go right through. Okay. You'll be fine. See? Nothing to it. Believe it or not.
Dude, that's wild.
Yeah. Yes. They are designed to break. We wouldn't make you hit a 2x4. That wouldn't do you any good.
It just seems so thick.
It's partly mental, just as much as it is physical.
Oh, that was cool.
Yeah, it's really
I'm
cool.
not even being like corny about it.
No. Breaking a board is the most fun thing I think you can do in martial arts. It's usually why we have kids do it their first day at the program, because
You don't take it away from me that kids can do this. Only big, strong adults like me can do this.
Oh no, they don't break these boards. They break tiny boards.
See, that's what I thought.
You
I want to
broke-
make a man board.
You broke a man board.
Thank you.
Don't worry. Yes. Now we'll have to work on you breaking 2 man boards.
Oh, fun watching. Cool to tune in. Watch anything you do. You got this, Evan. Woo! Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. This is actually fascinating to me. I don't know. This is not the martial arts stuff I did. I did do competitive. Like I never did Golden Gloves, but like a lot of jiu-jitsu tournaments, catch wrestling stuff, which is kind of my style for Brazilian jiu-jitsu stuff was a little bit different for a bigger guy. That a lot of the schools I went to were catch wrestling schools, and I'm not sure if you know what catch wrestling is.
We've talked about it a little bit.
So catch wrestling and
Explain
pro
for our
wrestling,
viewers.
catch wrestling and pro wrestling come out of the same branch of skill set. Basically, that back in like the Carney days, you would tour the town to town, and I would show up as nobody can pin me, no one can submit me, and Michael Cali, local strong guy of Oswego, New York, would pay $5 or $2 or whatever to have his chance to beat me in a wrestling match, to pin me.
Gotcha.
And usually, you'd have not dirty technique, but like the guy who was traveling obviously was there for a reason.
Right.
And sometimes, what they would do is when it started to catch on that like Michael is too good or Evan is too good, then you'd put plants in the audience. So Michael would be a plant at one town, and we would come up and we'd have real back and forth, whatever, and you'd almost submit me, and then I'd reverse you and pin you, and somebody else would go, well, if Michael Cali can almost beat him, I bet I can beat him. So then you get certain marks that come out of the audience that, is marks the right term? I don't know. My pro wrestling lingo is wrong. But, so then it evolved into, like shoot wrestling, which is real submission style wrestling, and pro wrestling, which is grounded and rooted in those actual the submissions that the WWE guys do. They really work.
Yes, they do.
If you're applying them correctly. Shayna Baszler, who I'm not a big pro wrestling fan, but Shayna Baszler came from the UFC, and she also got trained with that same coach that Brock Lesnar had that I trained with. That they come from a catch wrestling background, where catch wrestling is based in wrestling, and it's submission before position. So we talked about like me just trying to plow through you, grab your arm, and that's kind of the wrestling mentality. Whereas Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is kind of an offshoot of catch wrestling, a Japanese offshoot of catch wrestling that eventually moved to Brazil, is position before submission. So we get into that chess game of I'm not fighting for the arm bar. I'm trying to get control of your left leg. Now that I've got control of your left leg, I'm going to get control of I'm going to get my underhook in on under your right arm. So now I have you kind of cross body. Now I'm going to use that underhook and the control of your left leg to push you and reverse you. So now I'm on top of you. Now we've exposed your arm. So now what I'm going to do is slide my arm. I guess you're working slowly, whereas a catch wrestler is just going, what's the quickest thing I can grab and break?
Right.
So 2 different schools of thought, even though it's a very similar thing. So I don't know. What do you want to do? You want to do boards? Or do you want to show you a submission that I used to do?
Why don't you give the viewers what they want? You can show me a submission.
All right, I'll show you my go-to submission for when I was doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We're going to go to the down cam here. This is very exciting.
Cam.
All right, so I was a bigger guy that, if you want to get down,
Sure.
that would often fight off his back, which is kind of counterintuitive. Usually the bigger guys want to maintain top position. I became comfortable fighting off of my back because we had a lot of smaller guys that would fight off of their back. And in particular, people would go for like arm bars or leg locks. Let's get this camera out of the way here. But I would play off of my back in a guard position. So Michael would come at me, he's trying to save me. And what I would do is focus on attacking his leg. So I might pull you in, and then I'm going to basically take both of my legs and wrap them around my right and left leg, and wrap them around your left leg. And what this does, you get up a little bit more.
Yeah. I've never wrestled before.
So I kind of grapevine my legs. So I've got 2-on-1 leg control here. What am I doing? I just feel weird. You've never grappled before.
I've never grappled before.
All right. So I got 2-on-1 leg control. So I've got I figured forward his left leg, and now I've kind of have him locked in place. He can't really do much. He's going to maybe try to go out. What?
I said, this is correct.
If he tries to punch or posture up, I'm going to just kind of pull him towards me, and now I have kind of squashed him. He's not really going to do much. He can rabbit punch me.
That's not going to do too much good.
But the second part of this technique is then I go for his armpits, and I lift him up with that leg control, and kind of flop him over.
You're good. Relax.
To take a top position where his legs are still locked up, and then I can kind of go to the side and take control. But there's a whole technique there to like grapevining a leg and using that for control. And that's what I used to do all the time, is grapevine the person's leg, get them stuck in a position, and then basically just lift you up and heave you over. There's also a crotch ripper in there, which I won't do, but basically it tests your flexibility. So that's my one grappling technique.
I think that's very effective, Evan. I don't know a lot of grappling experience, but I can guarantee if somebody did that to me, I would have no clue how to get out of it. Taekwondo doesn't do a lot of grappling, obviously. We have self-defense, though. So my grandmaster has a grandmasters in both Taekwondo and Hapkido. So we have some self-defense motions. If someone were to grab me or strike me, I could get out of those a couple of
So these like lapel grabs?
Sure, you can do that. So from here, I would just kind of pin the wrist over here, and I would just drop my elbow right down on your arm and snap it.
And you could hear it crack, actually.
I did. Are you okay?
No, it's fine. Do you do like a double one?
Do a double shoulder grab, so I could come here, I could snap your hands off of me, chop you in the neck, knee, and I would take you right over. You learn a lot of different ways to get grabbed. You can do a cross shoulder grab, but I'm going to do the same exact thing because our grandmaster believes that it's better to learn 1 or 2 moves and practice them a lot to save your life as opposed to learning 20 or 30 different ways to get out of something. So we learn maybe 3 or 4 different wrist grabs, belt grabs, shoulder grabs, whatever it might be. Let me see, what do I want to do from here? I haven't been grabbing a cross shoulder grab in a while, so I'll just come here, and another pressure point there. Let's do a fun one. I'm going to grab my shoulders from behind.
You want like a bear hug?
Oh yeah, you can do that too. I'll just come here.
Yeah.
A little elbow, and then I would grab your leg and pull you right to the ground.
What did you want?
I was going to have you grab both of my shoulders because just go ahead and grab both my shoulders.
Oh, like this?
Yes, because this move that we like to teach people is really good for both breaking arms and breaking ribs. It's just fun, simple stuff. There are more complex motions. There's more kicks. There's more punches. But really, simplicity is the best way you could go in a martial art when your main purpose is to never have to use it.
Yeah.
So.
All right, we're gonna do one last one here.
Sure.
Because I went around. But what if I'm doing like this?
So if you're doing something like this, I would either stomp on your foot or peel your grip with a palm hit. I'm not actually going to palm heel through your... Do you want me to palm heel through your hands?
Do it.
Okay. Palm heel through your hands or... Wow, Evan's got a good grip, guys. We'll have to remember that.
Well, I would think that like...
So you come through here, and then you do a wrist lock here. I'm not used to my partners putting up this much of a fight. Well, are your hands okay?
Yeah, no, they're fine. Do you teach grips? Like... If I'm to lock you up, I'm going to do something I call an S grip, where I'm just taking my hands and I'm...
No. When we learn this move, so Evan just exposed a weakness in my curriculum. When we do this move, the people always grab us. Here, open up your hands for a second. They always grab like this, kind of more downwards, because it's more likely
I would
that
do
someone...
like a cup and saucer type thing, thing too.
But the thought is that whoever's attacking you is probably not smarter than you, so they wouldn't think as much about that grip. Like Evan's grip, I would be kidnapped, okay? No question.
Know about that.
But with a more
Yeah.
normal person's perspective on things, you would have no problem at all getting a wrist into position on one of these motions.
My other grip that I do sometimes is called a gable grip, and that's where I do a thumb through my index and middle finger, and again, it's a similar to that S grip, but it also just gives me it's more difficult for you to break out of.
But for any of you who are watching at home, if you ever can't break this grip, just bring your head back. Okay?
That's a good point because
You bring your head back and you hit their nose. That's all game over after that. So
what's the defense for that? If I was this guy, am I going into? Because there's no way I can get into your head really though, because you can just keep leaning forward.
I don't know.
Everybody just going down.
I think if you had me in a position like this, I would just step behind you and twist
Yeah.
and pull you right to the ground.
Yeah.
I don't think too much about what I do until someone grabs me sometimes, but that's always a little bit on the dangerous side. My least favorite thing to do is every once in a while my master instructor will ask me to put on a blindfold, and then he'll just grab me any way he can think of, and that is terrifying because you have no idea who's grabbing you, what direction. You have no clue how much control you have, how much distance you have away from the ground. But it helps force you to have those solid repetitions where you don't know what's going on, so you have to put it 100% in.
One final grip to never do is never interlace your fingers.
No.
This is probably the worst thing that you can do because now he's just going to break every single one of my fingers.
Yeah, I'll just do that.
So never interlace your fingers if you're trying to wrestle with somebody. Like I said, I like an S grip. I like a gable grip. You could do a gable grip without a finger. You could do a saucer and cup and saucer. There's a bunch of different holds, but that's interesting.
I think it's more interesting that I never thought of a different way to grab someone. That's pretty cool.
And see, that would be the first grip I would go to hold you. Would be that.
So if you have training, you have to hope that your partner doesn't, I suppose.
God, why the podcast is at a new low. Thank you, Lucas. Muscle memory.
Muscle memory. Everything is muscle memory. You're
Dude,
right.
it's so true. Like when you're competing or doing something like that, you don't have time. Like I told you, I would throw a really bad spinning back kick where it's like step and pivot and but like I don't have time to throw that if I'm sparring because I have to think about it too much. It doesn't come automatically. Whereas like my one laced leg grapevine thing, like that would just be as soon as we're down on the mat, my legs would just go, and like that was just it. I wouldn't think about it. I would just get you in the position that I want. It's funny because I haven't done that in probably 4 years.
You still have a solid hold.
But dealing with somebody, it's like I would immediately know how to put you in that position. But it like took me like a second where I was like, wait, why don't my legs? Oh yeah, there we are. But like it was just one of those things where like that was just a go-to. That was just a go-to, and it's especially at a lower level of martial arts. It's find a couple simple things that you do and become an expert at those things.
Exactly.
Find the 5 tools in your toolbox that are going to be like razor sharp, and then over time you'll be introduced things. You can pull some things out, put some things in, but it's just like I feel like that's the only reason I ever had really success was there were a few things that I could do really well that were a little bit outside of the normal of what people were doing, and when I would throw somebody in a position like that, they would panic and go, "I've never been here before." Whereas me, I've drilled it thousands and thousands of times, and like I'm not thinking anymore. I'm just reacting to your body because I know how you're going to move. I know where you're going to go, and I can again take that chess level approach and say,
yes,
he's going to do X, Y, or Z, and I got an answer for all that. And if he tries to do something really weird, well, I got an answer for that too. It's just my comfort zone.
When I was sparring a little bit more frequently, one of my favorite drills was a sidestep because everybody seems to forget that you can go diagonal whenever you're sparring in Taekwondo.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone, obviously, but most of the people I work with. There's a lot of forwards, backwards, and there's a lot of side to side.
Mm-hmm.
So when somebody throws a kick at you and you just slide right over here to the side, you almost are guaranteed a point because no one expects it.
Mm-hmm.
I worked on that really strong for about 2 years, and I was undefeated for 3 years after that.
Mm-hmm.
It was great.
That's like boxing and Muay Thai. It's all about taking those angles. What did my one coach call it? Like the V, where you're constantly stepping off to the side. You're constantly stepping off to the side. But it's that we would drill that where you're just going back and forth, just taking that. What's that angle where if you're throwing a punch at me, I'm over here now and I've got the punch on you, when you have to turn your body, but I'm constantly working that like little 45 degree.
Yep. No one expects a 45-degree angle.
Oh, let's break another board.
Absolutely. You can break as many boards as you want.
All right.
Boards for you to break.
Do I hold it this way?
Yeah, hold it that way. What do I want to do? You know what? I'm going to change your technique here.
Yep.
I'm going to have you hold this right up here
Okay.
because I'll show you what you're going to break a board with next, which is a hammer fist. And then
Okay.
you break with this part of your hand. So all you're going to do is you're going to measure it out. You're going to bring your hand right up, and you're just going to go right through. Okay? It's just with the side of the hand there.
That's so wild.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Board breaking is lots of fun.
All right, so we're gonna, before we get to a board, we're just gonna work on my hammer fist technique here
Oh,
real quick.
absolutely.
I don't know if you want a mitt.
I'll take a mitt. If you're a kid, I would have you hit my hand, but you're a little stronger than most of the kids I work with.
So am I hitting with the fleshy part of my? It's obviously it's not your
Not
wrist,
your wrist,
and
just,
it's not your forearm.
just that meaty part right there.
We oftentimes use actually another technique that I use if I get you in a joint lock or something like that is I can take this, they call it our blade, and
If
like
you
roll it up your thigh or something like that, and basically you start scraping your thigh meat off of the bone, and that's a great one too.
If you like forearm strikes more, I can have you do a forearm strike.
Let's.
You want to try the hammer fist?
I don't know how to throw a hammer fist.
Bring your hand up by your ear and just bring it straight down.
So my elbow's up high.
Yep, elbows up high, straighten it out and bring it down. Yeah, just like that. It's the most simplistic way to break a board, but it's the most effective. I mean, if you drop one of these on someone's head, they're never going to forget it. At least in my experience. I haven't hit too many people in the head with hammer fists, but enough. All right. No new comments?
It says, hey, that's my brother, ATL Lester.
Oh, that's my brother. Hi, Aiden. I'm glad you're watching the podcast. Measure it out. You're going to be just fine.
And I'm going for the
Uh-huh.
center of the board.
Yep.
There's not like a.
Nope,
I mean,
go
I
right
assume
for
it
the
was in the
center.
middle.
Go right for the center. You hit that hard enough to break this, no problem. See? Nothing to it.
Woo, that one
Amazing
stung a
job.
bit.
Sometimes they do. I should have warned you about that. What that means is there's a knot in your board. So if you ever hit a
Look at
board
that.
and it stings, it means there was a spot in there where the wood wasn't quite cut evenly. So Evan broke an even harder board than he did
All
the
right,
first time.
that's me. I'm done for the day. We got one more board. What do you want to do with this one?
I want to see if I can do...
Don't do anything too fancy because I feel like there's not enough room here.
All right, then I'll do this. I can hold for myself here. I'll just come right down with a neck hit, right in the middle of this here.
Do you want me to hold it?
No.
No. Oh.
Didn't work. We'll try one more.
You want me to
That'll
hold
make
it, or do you want to hold it?
No, I have to prove myself here.
Woo!
Just like that.
Wow. We did it.
That's
We broke
called a
boards.
speed break. Usually they break on the first try, but I would lie to you. I would be lying to you if I said I broke every board I've ever hit on the first try. That's just not a human being thing. I like to think I'm reasonably good at breaking boards, but not the best. There's always going to be someone better. Like Evan here.
I got the beef in my hand hurts on that last one.
You'll
That's a
be
good
fine
one though.
tomorrow.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I hope so. Anyways.
All right. Well, anyway.
That's it for boards. We're all out of boards.
Yeah.
So
I think that's it. I think we covered a lot of ground tonight.
I
this
think we
was
did
good.
too. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah. You've been watching a very weird episode of The Comic Shop Does a Podcast, featuring, how do you like to be, what's your title?
You know, I at the Dojang, they just call me Mr. Cali. There's nothing really super fancy. I don't really dive into Korean terminology too much. I guess head instructor would be Kobanim. That would be what they would call me. So if they're bowing in class and they say Kobanim K Kinye.
Featuring Kobanin K. Kinye, Michael Cali.
There we go.
And
Perfect.
I'm 7th degree white belt Evan Coy. This is a different one. Yeah. Could I be, you're saying like you're Uki?
Shiha?
Do you know what Uki is?
I do not.
Uki's a Japanese term for like your training partner, but I think it's usually like the more inexperienced, like, I don't know, whatever. But that's it. We tried.
We had a great time. I hope you did too.
Have a good night, everybody.
You as well.